So, ladies and gentlemen, I was going to do a regular mock draft, but I instead decided I wanted to go a step further, and we're going to do an entire mock draft off season here. So often when we talk about the draft, we only think about the draft itself, and we often forget about some of the moves we could make leading up to the draft that would make the draft less of a make or break situation and more of like a cherry on top. This is what some teams do, but the Ravens, they typically don't do this, unfortunately. At least in the Eric DeCosta era, since he's taken over as the GM, the Ravens, they usually do nothing in free agency, and then at least the first two waves of free agency, they do nothing, and then the draft ends up being make or break. We have to pick like 11 different picks, and then we end up waiting all the way till like the third or fourth wave of free agency, and then we pick up a older veteran who's cheap, and then we just hope, fingers crossed, we hope that that guy ends up being productive, and most of the time it fails miserably. Every now and then you'll have a success story like Kyle Van Noy or Jadeveon Clowney, but most of the time it fails miserably. It blows up in our face every single time, or most of the time. So I wanted to go into an exercise, a fun little exercise that we could do a couple times leading up to free agency and the draft, where we talk about certain moves that we can make to actually fix the holes that the Baltimore Ravens have had for the past however many years. So first things first is we gotta find an offensive coordinator, right? We made a big move and we finally fired John Harbaugh. We hired Jesse Minter. Now we got to go find an offensive coordinator. The DC, the defensive coordinator, it doesn't really matter that much because Jesse Minter, for the most part, is going to be running the show. He's going to be calling the plays. So I'm not super worried about that. But this OC hire is make or break because this could really help this offense be put over the top, or it could cause us to be stuck in the same situation where we have a mediocre offensive mind calling plays, and then Lamar has to play Superman ball in order to keep us afloat. And that's not sustainable. You want somebody who actually puts a real system in place. That way, if anybody, whether it's Lamar or Derrick Henry or one of the receivers, if they're struggling, the system is still the system. And as long as we play within that system, we can still weather the storm and still prosper. So I ended up deciding in this mock draft scenario, I decided to go hire Nathan Shieldhouse. I think that's how you say his name. Nathan Shieldhouse from the Los Angeles Rams. I desperately would like, not desperately, but I would really like somebody from the McVay tree to get into this, to be a coach, a play caller on this team. And Nathan Shieldhouse, he's been groomed under Sean McVay. He's a hot name right now. Right now, he's being interviewed by teams like the Browns to be their head coach. But I would like, in this mock scenario, we make him an offer he can't refuse. And he comes in, he turns down the Browns job and comes in here and he decides that he wants to be the offensive coordinator and play caller for this Ravens team. And now we got our head coach and OC sorted out. The DC, like I said, it doesn't matter that much. But now we're heading into free agency and we got to figure out how to free up some more money. So right now, as it stands, we have about roughly $13.9 million in cap space. That's obviously not enough to do anything. We gotta find a way to free up some money. So first things first, Lamar Jackson, he's making the most money here. He has a $74 million cap hit in 2026. So I renegotiated his contract, and now we don't have to take on any dead money, but we are going to free up approximately $40.5 million in cap space. So from there, I looked at Roquan Smith. In 2026, Roquan Smith his cap hit is going to be $32 million. If we trade him post June 1st, we will save $20 million. It will cost us about $12.7 million in dead money, but again, we will save $20 million. So I opted to trade him. Where did I trade him? I ended up choosing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I forgot the name of their star linebacker, but he was getting older. I figured maybe they would be interested in going to get a guy like Roquan. That way they could shore up their linebacker room at least for the next couple of seasons. So if we could get a fourth round pick for Roquan, I think that would be a win at this point, especially if a team like Tampa or whoever is willing to take on his money, take on his contract, so we don't have to worry about that next season and the season after. Then I had to really question, what should I do with Marlon Humphrey? Now, in the case of Marlon Humphrey, I was really going back and forth on this because I think I'm one of the few Ravens fans who I actually like Marlon Humphrey, but at the same time, it's obvious that Marlon Humphrey, he's past his prime and he's making way too much money right now. Right now, his cap hit is going to be $26 million. So I decided to retain Marlon Humphrey. However, I restructured his contract, so it dropped his salary down to about $12 million, and we ended up saving more or less $13.4 million in cap space. And then I looked at somebody like a Mark Andrews, who I believe we should have tried to trade him after the 2024 season. That's what I thought we were going to do. Unfortunately, they didn't. So from there, I said, hey, well, there's still a outside chance you could try to move off of him. So in this scenario, that's what I did. I made Mark Andrews a post June 1st trade where it cost us $2.5 million in dead money, but we saved $4.5 million for the cap. Where did I send Mark? I sent Mark Andrews to Tennessee. I do believe that Mark Andrews could be helpful to the Tennessee Titans, even though Mark Andrews has not been productive for us in the playoffs. He's he's had 0 touchdowns, 10 drops. Several of his drops led to interceptions. He's had fumbles. Like, even though he's come up short for us in the playoffs, I do think for a young team like the Titans that have a young quarterback in Cam Ward, who doesn't have a whole lot of weapons yet, and they're not even at the point where they're trying to make the playoffs just yet. They're still trying to just build a team. A guy like Mark Andrews could be a nice safety net or safety blanket, whatever, for Cam Ward. And if we could get a 7th round pick at this point for Mark Andrews, I would be super excited. I know many Ravens fans, they believe that Mark Andrews, he could get a 1st or 2nd round pick, but that's not realistic. You're talking about a guy who is about he's going to be 31 this season, who is 5 years past his prime. He's clearly not the same player. He's had several lower body injuries. And even at his best, if we're being honest, he wasn't the best. He was, at best, you would say maybe 5th, maybe 4th. But either way, you're talking about a guy who doesn't have the trade value that Ravens fans may think he does. So from there, also, I traded Rashad Bateman. Right now, he has a $6 million cap hit. Once I traded him post June 1st, it counted as $2.8 million in dead money, but we ended up saving $3.3 million. And I ended up sending Rashad Bateman. I was thinking either Dallas or Miami. I know Dallas wanted him last year before they traded for George Pickens, but at the same time, they still may want him right now because there's no guarantee they're going to be able to pay George Pickens. So maybe they're still interested in Bateman. Even though Bateman has not been super productive, he's a guy who is signed to an extremely team-friendly contract. There's a lot of teams who, because right now, when you look at Rashad Bateman's 2 extensions, when you average it out, he's only going to make about $9 million a year for the next, like, I think 4 or 5 seasons. So there's a lot of teams that would still probably be interested in that. So I was thinking either Dallas or Miami. I know Miami, they benched Tua, but he's still on the team technically, so they may still kind of give him another chance. And a guy like Tua, he's big on playing on-time football. Rashad Bateman's a receiver who can thrive playing on-time football, so maybe that could be a good fit over there. Maybe we could get a day 3 pick for Bateman, like a 6th or 7th round pick. I would still be happy with that as well at this point. And then from there, I ended up trading Justice Hill, and I really like Justice Hill, but at this point, he's still a solid running back. But at this point, Keaton Mitchell is more explosive. Um, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. We don't need Justice Hill like that. it would be nice to have him, but I do think we could find somebody younger in the draft who can easily replace him. So right now he has a $3.8 million cap hit. We trade him post June 1st and we save $3 million in cap. We only have about 600,000 in dead money. So now, after we made those different moves, our cap space has gone from 13.9 million to 89 million dollars, which is much more flexible and it allows us to be able to do a lot more this offseason when it comes to actually trying to fix the team. So the first with all this cap space, the first thing I did was I re-signed Tyler Linderbaum to a 4-year, $80 million contract, which I know many Ravens fans, they've turned on Tyler and they feel as though we don't need him and we should let him walk. I fully disagree. If we let Tyler walk, we do not have a solution in place. I know many people assume that we could just throw Corey Bullock out there as the starter, but again, there's no guarantee that's actually going to work out. Even though Tyler is not the best center, like he has flaws, he's still a solid center. He's a starting caliber center. And to be fair to him, this past season, he was stuck in between the worst guard tandem in the NFL. So I still believe in the long term, Tyler Linderbaum would be worth this contract. And again, we don't have a solution in place when it comes to center. I do not want to see us go through another season of experimenting on the offensive line and letting good players walk for no good reason and just trusting that we're going to be able to just plug in anybody and it'll figure itself out. That's how we ended up with Daniel Faalele, and that's how we ended up with Andrew Voorhees becoming starters for multiple seasons, and we have seen just how badly that has worked out. It has been a disaster. So like I said, I'm signing Tyler Linderbaum to a 4-year, $80 million contract. He's making $20 million a year. It is what it is. As far as another move I wanted to make this offseason, I brought back Kevin Zeitler. Yes, Kevin Zeitler. I know if you have seen this channel before, you know I've mentioned many, many times that I don't think us letting Kevin Zeitler go was a good idea. And for the past 2 seasons, to me, it hasn't made sense why we let him go, and it hasn't made sense that we haven't brought him back yet. Obviously, he's older now, but still, at the very least, he's a veteran who's capable of still being a competent guard, a competent offensive lineman. And at this stage of his career, he's not going to demand much money. Last season with the Titans, he got about $9 million. And I think the year before with the Lions, he only made about roughly $4 or $5 million, something like that. So in this mock scenario, I brought back Kevin Zeitler for a 1-year, $5 million contract. And then from there, so now we have like a little more depth and we have like a veteran presence on the O-line. And now from there, I made a very big move, a big swing where I brought in David Edwards. David Edwards is the starting left guard for the Buffalo Bills, and he's one of the best guards in the entire NFL. He was drafted by the Los Angeles Rams a couple years ago. Immediately worked his way into being a starter and has been a really solid starter ever since. He's been a stud. A lot of times you hear many people push the narrative that Josh Allen has no help, and I think that is a spit in the face to guys like David Edwards, because again, the Bills have arguably a top 3, definitely a top 5 offensive line in football, and David is a big reason why they're one of the best offensive lines in football. I want him here. I want him to replace Andrew Voorhees as our left guard. I think that would be a major upgrade. So in this scenario, I signed him to a 4-year, $72 million contract. He's making $18 million a year. Some people may say that's a bit of an overpay, because right now, websites like Spot Track or whatever, they're projecting that he's gonna get about 15 or 16 million a year. I don't care what they're projecting. 18 million a year. Number one, that's not even the highest paid guard, because the highest paid guards right now, they're making in the ballpark of 24 million a year. So 18 a year isn't too bad. And again, it's worth it at this point. We need to fix the offensive line. This offensive line has not been good in about 7 years. Do y'all realize 2019 was the last time we had a respectable O-line? That was 7 years ago. Do y'all see how fast time is flying? So I think this contract will be worth it. 4 years, $72 million. So from there, I wanted to get some help on the outside. Like I said in my video previously about Zay Flowers, even though I'm proud of Zay Flowers by himself is not enough for this wide receiver room. Zay Flowers would be better as a number 2 wide receiver. We need to go get a true number 1. So I made the move to sign George Pickens to a 4-year, $120 million contract. He's going to be making $30 million a year. If people think that's an overpay, I do not care. It He's worth every penny at this point. I don't care if you think he has an attitude. He is productive. He does everything that we want from a number 1 wide receiver. He has the frame that we want as far as like the length. Like he's a tall guy with long arms. He makes plays like it's nobody's business. And if Eric DeCosta was good at drafting, he should have been on this team in the first place instead of us going out and drafting David Ojabo back in 2022. So I'm bringing in George Pickens, 4 years, $120 million. And then the last move I'm going to make in free agency is I'm going to bring back Charlie Kolar for a 3-year, $8 million contract. And I know many of you may be wondering why I haven't mentioned Isaiah Likely. As much in this mock scenario, as much as I like Likely, because of all the other moves that I've made, there's really not a whole lot of money left. I'm just gonna let him walk. I already traded Mark Andrews, so from this point, I'm just gonna bring back Charlie Kolar for a cheap deal and maybe try to pick up an undrafted free agent as a tight end or something like that. Because Charlie Kolar, I still believe, could be a respectable starting tight end. He's the best blocking tight end on our team. And also, he can do what Mark Andrews does in the passing game. Like, all Mark Andrews does at this point in the passing game is he operates as a basically a possession receiver, somebody who's just going to help move the chains. Charlie Kolar can do that. And to me, I think 3 years, $8 million for a starting tight end who's a great blocker and a good enough pass catcher. Like, he's not going to make splash plays, but he's going to be able to do his job. I think that's a solid way to go. So now we're done with free agency. We're going into the draft with a much more impressive offensive line, a much more impressive wide receiver room, and now we could go into the draft not desperately hoping that we could find rookies to fix the O-line or find rookies who can be number 1s next to Zay Flowers. Like, I don't want to go into the draft with that type of desperation. I want to go in with a little more comfort and flexibility. So now we got the 14th pick in the NFL draft, and I want to move up, man. Again, if y'all know this channel, y'all know I'm not a big fan of EDC hoarding all these picks every single year just so he could pick a billion players. And out of those billion players, most of them don't even make the roster anyway. Like, and then the other ones, most of them don't work out. Like, I want to move up for better prospects. I was trying to get Ruben Bain, ladies and gentlemen. I tried so hard to get Ruben Bain. I tried to trade up, and usually these mock draft websites, they usually let you get away with crazy trades. But ladies and gentlemen, I could not crack. I tried so hard to crack into that top 5, but I could not do it, ladies and gentlemen. I tried so hard, but I just couldn't do it. Even the mock draft simulator doesn't even want to let me cook to go get Ruben Bain. That's a shame. But either way, I still was able to get into the top 8 because there was still one other person who I thought would be worth trading up for and who I think is deserving of being a top 10 pick. So I traded with the New Orleans Saints. I traded the 14th overall pick, the 115th overall pick, which I think is like a 4th or 5th rounder. And I also traded a 2027 second round pick with the Saints to move up from 14 to pick number 8. And with pick number 8, I ended up choosing David Bailey, who is an edge rusher out of Texas Tech. somebody who I was really excited about. So from there, in the second round with pick number 45, I picked Caleb Banks, who is a defensive tackle out of Florida. And then with pick number 80, I ended up picking Jennings Dunker. I think it's how you pronounce his name. It's either Jennings or Gennings, but I'm gonna just say Jennings. Jennings Dunker. He is a tackle out of Iowa. Hopefully, he could develop into a tackle who maybe could replace Ronnie Stanley in a couple of seasons, or at least compete with Carson Vincent for the replacement for Ronnie Stanley in a couple of seasons. Only time will tell. And then from there, I wanted to make one more trade because I still felt like I was like, man, I still have way too many picks, and I'm not gonna make good use of all of these picks because no, most players, most GMs don't make good use of all of those picks. That's why I've been somebody who's been against the idea of picking that many players every single year because it's very difficult to make good use of all of those picks. So I tried to get as close to pick number 100 as possible. The closest I got was pick number 114. I traded with the Atlanta Falcons. I traded the 152nd, the 160th, and the 172nd pick in order to move up to pick number 114. And with that pick, I ended up picking running back Nicholas Singleton out of Penn State. He's somebody that I'm really excited about. I think he has massive potential. I think that if you sit him, this is a dude who's 6 foot 226, a strong lower body. He has breakaway speed. I think if you and he's a playmaker. This is a guy who I think if you put behind Derrick Henry for 3 years, he or 2 years, whatever, he would have a really good chance of developing into our new bell cow running back. No disrespect to Keaton Mitchell or Rasheen Ali or Justice Hill. I just don't think any of them are going to be that. And I think somebody like Nicholas could be that. And we could get him on a rookie contract, whereas the rest of these guys, they're going to be on their way out of here in like a season or two anyway. So that's what I ended up picking with the 114th pick. The last four picks in this draft, honestly, I was not nearly as invested in these last four picks. So I started just taking flyers on certain guys. So with pick number 173, I picked Grayson Halton, who's a defensive tackle out of Oklahoma. With pick number 210, I picked CJ Daniels, who's a wide receiver out of Miami. Pick number 249, I picked Kendall Daniels, who's a linebacker out of Oklahoma. And then with pick number 252, I picked Dylan Wade, who is a guard out of Auburn. So in this exercise, I really enjoyed thinking about these scenarios. In my scenario, we, for the most part, at least on paper, we fixed this offensive line. We were able to get what I believe is going to be a premier edge rusher in this class. And he's probably not going to be as good as Ruben Bain, but he still has a chance to be very good in his own right. And we also were able to get some interior defensive linemen in this draft as well. And, we got potentially the next running back who can be the successor to Derrick Henry. So let me know, was there anything that you wish I had done differently from this mock off season? And what are some things that you would like to see done in this off season instead of us just doing nothing at all?